Greetings from Europe. We start a second episode of our show called Let's Talk Europe, which is about the issues in Europe that might concern the US. And of course, right now is the hottest topic is war in Ukraine and the aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine. And the first one we did was about the history of the war, which is lasting already for 8 years and 3 months. And the second one is going to be more military perspective with a retired colonel from Lithuania, Vaidotas Malinionis, and he's going to present probably what are the hottest topics, not the topics, maybe issues that concern not only Ukrainians, but the wider population of Europeans and the citizens of the US. So, hello, Vaidotas.
Hello, how are you?
I'm always fine. Of course, the topic is not so nice. Would be better to talk about how the Ukrainians defeated Russians, but I hope in a few months we'll do the episode as well. So to start, I wanted to ask, what is the current state of war that we see day 101? If we count the active phase and if we count the whole thing, it's 8 years and 100 above 100 days. So how do you see the situation?
Well, generally talking, the Russians didn't manage to, fulfill their initial goal to overtake entire country, overthrow the government, and change the regime. And so, what was unexpected, not only by Russians but also by our Western friends, the level of resistance Ukrainians, demonstrated. So they have very strong will to fight for their independence. And of course, first goal of Russia failed, and then they switched their goal to less, ambitious goal to overtake the entire Donbas region, which includes, 2 districts, Luhansk and Donetsk. Crimea they already have. And they actually now controlling a bigger part of that Donbas region. So, and this is approximately 20% of the entire Ukrainian territory. Yes? So it's a pretty big territory. So I think it's larger than Italy, the region they are controlling. So the front line is now very long and curved. It from the north part Kharkov, and it goes up to Kherson, which is on the north part, on the south part of Ukraine, and it is approximately 950 miles long line. So, but now. Russians concentrated biggest effort on Severodonetsk city, which is in vicinity of Luhansk Oblast. This is that city on the map. If you look on the map, it is in the eastern part of Ukraine. And they managed to take over half of that city, but as you know, the Ukrainians still fighting in Severodonetsk. But also, and so the biggest effort is there. They also tried to encircle, the Ukrainian forces, but they couldn't manage to do that. But they managed to, enter the city. Now. Very tough battles are going in the city of Severodonetsk, but of course there are places there also the battles happening, but only not with lesser intensity. So the goal for Ukrainians right now is to stop the Russians' advance. Yes, especially in Severodonetsk. In other places we can say that they are stopped and delayed. And to force, the events as a, frontier battle, so low intensity battle. And of course, it looks like they will be successful because Russia is also culminating with their logistics, yes, and they fighting at high intensity requires a lot of logistics, a lot of effort, So, and keeping long time this intensity is impossible. So I believe, and also Ukrainian experts says that Russia will not be capable to keep the same intensity. So what is the best outcome right now for Ukrainians, is to stop advance of Russian forces and to continue, low intensity battles on at the very tactical level, and wait for the weapons which are coming from our Western friends, yes, particularly from the United States, according to Lend-Lease program, yes, and United States are providing HMARS artillery, rocket-propelled artillery systems, which are very essential right now for Ukrainians because this war, I should mention, is more or less, artillery war between belligerents, yes, and that means that the side which has better, longer range artillery has the biggest advantage. So those long-range artillery weapons are very essential for Ukrainians, and then they will be capable to overpower, Russians' artillery systems or indirect fire systems. Yeah.
Vaidotas, before we go into the weapons topic, I want to ask you one more thing. We all approached, the Russian army as the second strongest army in the world, and as a professional, after this 100 days, in terms of logistics, operations, tactical, how would you define the military might of Russian? I mean, probably not the only surprise. You said that there was a surprise that Ukrainians managed to last for so long, but as I understand, most of the civilized world thought that the Russians can crush, similar size to Ukraine country easily, and we saw a different story. What is the main reason, or maybe there are a few reasons here, of this narrative collapse of this narrative?
Yeah, as I mentioned also at the very beginning, that Russian military might was very overestimated, very drastically overestimated. So and historically, we just forgetting history. Historically, Russia always, possessed itself much stronger than it is in reality. So it's the history of Russia. So they always try to possess themselves much stronger than they are in reality. And that estimation, was also very bad for Ukraine, actually, because if Western countries would, estimate Russia's military might as it is, it's a weak military force, then probably I believe they would be more eager to provide assistance for Ukrainians and faster. So, and in a war, each day is very vital and very important because people are being killed, civilians are being killed, a lot of casualties, a lot of, the destroyed buildings and so on, so on. So, and what is a weak point in Russia's military might is, of course, personnel. Personnel is very demotivated. There are a lot of soldiers who are refusing go to battlefield. They want to leave armed forces, and for Russian officers it's very, very hard to force them to go to the battlefield. But of course they are forcing. They have very rough methods how to do it. And of course preparation and readiness of the troops and training level is very low. At the very beginning of the war, 100 days ago, yes, definitely, they throw the best troops, and even those the best troops didn't perform very well. So they couldn't organize maneuver by power, by fire, by weapon systems. So they just performed very, very poorly. That war reminded, the World War II actually tactics, not a modern joint war when you are combining, naval forces, air power, infantry, artillery. So very good, coordination. So that is absent totally in Russian forces. So additional and one more issue is very bad planning, of course, of Russian command. Yes, Russian headquarters performed very, very bad plan. And initial war, they calculated that it will last for them 3 days, and in 3-4 days they will overtake Ukraine, which never happened, of course, as you know. And of course, they didn't plan logistics for that, so they totally miscalculated and misevaluated, the Ukraine. And logistics also very, very poor. For example, the working horse in armed forces is a truck, military trucks. And if you have enough trucks, and you need good trucks, because trucks are main horses which are bringing to the battlefield, everything, all essential needs, including ammunition, food supplies, fuel supplies, everything. So in order to move forward your troops, you have to have those trucks. And fortunately for Ukraine, Russia doesn't have trucks which they can, operate very well even in off-road conditions. They are using very old, outdated, military trucks and even civilian trucks. So logistic is very, very bad part in Russia.
But we even saw that the maintenance of the vehicles that they have is actually terrible. I mean, there were plenty of experts who were seeing, the oil leaks from the tires, and they were saying that these machines were not moved for a long time. How does a country of this, might of this military, because they are quite focused on their military strengths and they usually emphasize it, but how does it come that there is no maintenance and actually approach towards keeping in shape?
Yeah, Russia, of course, we already lost more than 1,000, for example, only tanks, yes. And even during the first days, they didn't use only modern tanks. They brought maybe 4 generations of tanks. And now they even introduced T-62 tank, which is 50 years old tank. And even I didn't see myself, but I heard some Ukrainians on TV were talking, even T-55 was in the battlefield. So you can imagine. So it's this is but anyway, those tanks are shooting, they can kill, but only if you compare it to like modern Mercedes, you compare to sometimes 70s Russian Zhiguli vehicle, no automatic, no steering wheel, nothing, it's just like a can
on the wheels.
On wheels, yes. So and it is, and of course, to upkeep running vehicles, tanks, including tanks and trucks, you have to organize very well organized logistics. Even you don't use it, you have to take care about it, and you have to spend resources, in order to have your reserves operational. And that part in Russia is also very in bad shape. So they are struggling, of course, with their equipment for the battlefield. They and also the same personnel, they call this war special operation, so they haven't initiated yet, mobilization. They are requesting, military assistance from Syria, from Chechnya, yes, which means that they don't have enough troops, or reserves to support those troops. Even, Wagner Group, which is a private military company, is fighting in the battlefield. So yes, everything is hard for them.
Okay, so the other before we before we go to the weapons, the other thing that I wanted to ask is it's not the first time that I mean, I'm talking about February 24th, when the last phase of the war, these 101 days, started. It's not the first time that the Russians had military exercise on the border of Ukraine, and this time they decided basically to invade an independent country. What has changed from, let's say, 2021 Zapad military exercise um, compared to this year, February 24th, that the Russians' decision was different, and they actually proceeded with the attack on the sovereign territories of Ukraine?
The answer is very simple. You know, they during the Zapad exercises, they didn't have enough, you know, not enough troops which are deployed to take over their goals, you know, to take over Ukraine. So,
but you know, the military experts say that in any calculation you do, Zapad 2021 or this year, the number was actually too small in any calculation. So it's probably not only the number that led to the decision.
Yes, and also don't forget that at the same time also we had, you know, that illegal migrant crisis. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like, according to their plan, it was, you know, to flood Europe with those migrants, especially Poland and Baltic states. Yes. And it was, I can say right now, I can say, tell that it was first phase of the war, you know, the migrants. But what, you know, what happened unexpectedly, you know, our politicians find out very good solution, which was unmanageable, you know, a year ago, what it is possible to do like this. So we just acted not like really very European country, but we took pretty strong point, and we didn't let, you know, those migrants into the country. And that was also unexpected, of course, by Putin himself, you know, and Lukashenko.
Well, I guess we have to maybe clarify for the viewers on the other side of the Atlantic, what are we talking here about? Basically, the leader of Belarusian, Lukashenko, decided to basically test the border strength of Poland and Lithuania first with the so-called migrants or tourists or whatever you want to call them. They basically were flown from all parts of the world, Middle East, into Minsk, and then from Minsk they were guided towards the border. And actually, the European Union has quite a soft, you know, approach towards illegal migrants. And as Colonel mentioned, the situation was not the same when those migrants tried to enter from the territories of Lithuania and Poland. And this probably, as Colonel says, was unexpected. So yeah, how do you see the connection forward?
So and of course their plan failed because, you know, Poland immediately took our example, yes, and they also started pushing back those illegal migrants. So they didn't flood our, you know, European countries. And of course, you know, in order to launch such a huge campaign, please remember that they deployed close to 200,000 troops, you know, alongside the Ukrainian border. Plus, they also deployed troops in Belarus, inside of Belarus, alongside the Ukrainian border. So it was approximately close to 200,000 troops. Of course, half of them, at least half of them, are logistic, you know, support troops. But roughly 100,000 or you know, maybe how they called it, tactical battle groups. So it could be 100, more than 100 battle tactical groups.
But Vaidotas, what I'm trying to ask here, Ukraine is a huge country in terms of Europe. Yes. You know, and we are talking about the Ukrainian military, which is estimated to be over 1 million, or what, you know, people, and here you try to take such military with 100,000 tactical units, tactical personnel.
Yes, and then American intelligence, and UK intelligence started, communicating warnings about that Russia probably will attack Ukraine. Yes, we also were discussing with other experts, and we didn't believe that they will try to take over entire Ukraine. Yes, what we believed that force what they deploying, alongside Ukrainian border, they can overtake Donbas region. Yes, that is realistic, But we didn't believe that they will launch, that campaign on the entire Ukraine in maybe 4 or 5 different directions, And of course, they failed. And that is, miscalculation of their planners, and of course, miscalculation, and they didn't understand reality, about Ukraine, about their will to fight, and Ukrainians demonstrated, very high will to fight, and they are still fighting, and I believe they will win. They will win.
Yeah, no doubt we have in that. So the main probably thing that I want to talk here is the different aims of this war for different participants, if we can call it like that. Of course, Ukraine is fighting for the territory to secure reclaim the land that was taken, occupied, annexed, and stuff like that. Then there is Russia with their ambitions to restore sort of Soviet Union. But we have some other participants, maybe not direct participants, and here I'm talking about the European Union and the United States. What do you think about this prolonged war narrative that we hear in sources from sources in US that say that this is kind of a war that can drain Russia, and the West is kind of using Ukraine as some kind of wound, in Russian, this body, let's call it like that, that they want to actually weaken the military and weaken the regime, and maybe reach some kind of a regime change.
Yeah, regime change is possible, but concerning, prolonged war, I think sanctions maybe, what European Union and other Western countries imposing on Russia is more effective maybe than prolonged war. But you can imagine we are still, buying, gas from Russia. Except Lithuania, we already cut that line because we have luxury to take the gas from the seaport side, yes, from the coastline. But Germany is buying, and even only European Union is paying, I don't know, 200 billiards. Yes, already we paid since the beginning of war for Russia, and they can, acquire and buy weapons and ammunition, to fight the war. So this is very vital. We are supplying, European Union, especially Germany, the biggest countries are supplying Russia with the resources by buying, gas. And of course, and Ukraine, for example, if you compare, 200 billiards for Russia and a land lease from the United States is 30 something billiards, yes, billions. So Russia is receiving much more than Ukraine, so if you compare it. But nevertheless, they are very thankful to the Western allies. Right now, they are providing, weapons and even, very powerful weapons for.
Yeah. So regarding these weapons, in US there is a narrative that the guns that can reach Russia should not be provided to Ukraine. And they are talking about, these artillery systems, rocket artillery systems that can be different from, from 70 kilometers to 200 kilometers. So what do you, as a professional, think of, first of all, such narrative and such classification of weapons, because artillery and rocketry, can it be, offensive, defensive? It's actually a weapon which can be used differently, and it all comes down, on the purpose, not on the weapon itself.
Yeah, I think this discussion probably was initiated. I don't think probably. I am sure it was initiated by Russian diplomats, of course. This question,
So it's a narrative that was pushed from Kremlin.
Yeah, of course, and don't forget that fear initially, especially it was very initially visible at the very beginning of the war, that fear of Western countries was a fuel for Russia's aggression. And the more Western countries started behaving more brave, then we saw that Russia is also stepping back. So, which means that letting aggressor, and being afraid is not a good strategy. So, and thanks God, it's changed right now. And concerning the weapons, even so, yeah. HMARS, that rocket propelled artillery system, which is being already provided by the United States, is very necessary and very powerful weapon. Can fire, depending on the type of ammunition, from with a less powerful ammunition up to 70 kilometers, which is 55 miles maybe range, and up to 300 kilometers, or almost 100 how many miles, 200 miles approximately, if other type of ammunition would be provided. And President of the United States, Biden, after those efforts, which was organized by Russian diplomats, announced that America will not provide, that ammunition which has a range 200 miles, because otherwise Ukrainians will be firing into the inside the Russia.
But Vaidotas, you probably understand that if you basically launch those weapons from, let's say, Kharkiv, which is like 20 or 30 kilometers from the border, you can reach the Russian,
definitely. Belgorod can be reached even with that much weaker ammunition. So Belgorod can be reached, and other cities, of course. So, and Ukrainians say we can also shoot at Russian cities even with that smaller ammunition. But now I think they achieved, agreement, United States and Ukraine. And Ukraine promised they will not be using that ammunition inside of Russia's territory. And that means that probably they will get also that more powerful ammunition, which can reach 200 miles, of the range. But what is most important, nobody, not Western countries are not recognizing that Crimea and Donbass is Russia, yes, which means that Ukrainians will be capable to shoot inside of Crimea territory, because it's their territory, and they will not break the promise to the United States that they are launching, using that ammunition inside of Russia. So that allows for them to cover entire Crimea, and even that bridge, which probably they intend to destroy one day.
Yeah, but there was a question from one of our viewers. This system, HIMARS system, is the main purpose of it to basically cut the logistical routes, that supply Russians, or what is the main purpose of this type of weapon in this stage of the war, and how can it change the direction, the situation in the war itself?
Yeah, the range of HMARS definitely is longer than Russian artillery range. So this is a game changer, actually. And the purpose of this, artillery system, rocket propelled artillery system, is to destroy enemies' logistical nodes, is to destroy, command posts. and also to destroy targets or military units which are located in certain big positions. So in English, how it's called is yes, position of the units, especially so. And if you destroy that, those targets in the deep operational area, you disrupt entire operation of the enemy. All logistics, everything, and support and supplies, everything will be disrupted, and that means the enemy will have to step back to the further from the fighting positions because they will not be receiving enough supplies and support. So because as I mentioned before, this war is more artillery war. So we can call it, it's an artillery war. Of course, we are using drones, and especially Ukrainian side are using drones. And amazingly, Russia doesn't have so many drones as Ukrainians, and of course aviation. But aviation is performing only now on the front line, and Russians are using aviation. They are dropping, bombs also on the Ukrainian positions.
So regarding this aviation thing, can these systems destroy like the current advanced fighters that Russian aviation has? Will it be a threat to that? Or regarding aviation, Ukraine requires some other weaponry that is still needed?
HMARS is not, of course, it cannot hit flying, jet, but it can hit jet, which are parked in the airport somewhere. Yes, so which means that Russians will have to make further their airports. They will not be able to use, for example, Crimea or Donbass region. They will have to move those airports inside of the Russia, and preferably further than 200 miles from Ukrainian border, and which means it's additional additional distance, additional resources, and not so quick reaction. So it will make a big headache for Russia, definitely.
So, but like in general, this anti-aircraft systems, that are needed to basically stop the aviational attacks, is that vital for Ukraine at the moment, or they can do without it, and basically with the artillery and this and these HIMARS systems, they can do the job and actually stop,
Yeah.
the front approaching deeper into the territory.
Yeah, Russia is still using, indirect fire from Belarus and Russia's territory with rocket launchers. So they're using, rocket ballistic and wing rockets, winged rockets. And for that, Ukrainians need, three types of air defense systems. So one is long range, air defense system like Patriot. And I already heard that it looks like they received few, pieces of that equipment. That is very essential, to protect their cities, which are, further from the front line. And of course, medium range, which we have, and short range, system. So in order to effectively fight against, those rockets, you need to have three layers of air defense. So long range, medium range, and short range, and of course, radar systems. So yes, if they will have more air defense system, then destruction level will be reduced, and destruction level will be reduced. Then Russian forces will be forced out of Ukrainian territory, and their airdromes, airports will be moved further. So, and that indirectly, but HMARS systems also will help.
So if I understand correctly, there is still a long way to go, and quite a lot of weaponry is needed. And what we hear, from the Western countries, that they are afraid of confrontation, direct confrontation with Russia, and Russian diplomats, for example, the ex-president Medvedev is threatening with the nuclear attacks. As a professional, how do you see this nuclear threat narrative? Because well, the Russian side, the Russian Kremlin leaders, they are not some kind of Islamic, terrorists. They don't want to sacrifice themselves for some mystical, reasons. They are very pragmatic mafia type of leaders that want to live, and they want to live well, and their families and stuff like that. So it's quite a strange narrative that the Westerners believe that this threat, the nuclear threat, is actually very real. How do you see it as a professional?
As I mentioned a while ago, the fear, Western fear is a fuel for Russia's aggression. And nuclear, weapon is exactly what is used to bring fear to the West. But the good news that Western countries now they are not so afraid as before. And yes, you are right. Definitely, I believe Russia's elite and even Putin himself, they love life. Yeah, because otherwise they will not buy those, luxury, yachts, they will not be building, luxury mansions around, they really love life. So, and there is also, I think, good one good thing what General Milley, Chief of Joint Staff from the United States, done. He called to, probably not directly to Putin, but to some, his representative, and he said that if you will be using military weapon, nuclear weapon, in Ukraine or anywhere else, you will not receive, back hit to Moscow, for example, or St. Petersburg, but you will receive, tactical nuclear, strike directly to your bunker, to Putin's yacht, actually. So, and they made it very clear. So we will not be killing, Russians, but we will kill you. And doesn't matter how deep is your bunker, that our tactical nuclear weapon is capable to destroy any type of bunker. And if you manage somehow to stay alive, you will never go back to the surface because everything will be ruined above you. So the perspective, is very bad. And that probably calmed down the Kremlin, and their rhetoric slightly changed. So, and I think that was a genius, approach. Probably it was contemplated well in advance, and I think that is genius, and that message is very, very useful and on time from our American friends.
Well, there is another narrative which I want to briefly touch. Is this narrative is talk to Putin, and I hear, some journalists in the American media, they are suggesting that maybe Biden should meet in some neutral country with Putin and talk, regarding resolving peace in the world. I mean, here in Europe, closer to Ukraine, closer to Russia, we know that talking to Putin is a pointless exercise, because in the end he does what he does, and the talks are just, buying him some time and maybe something else. How do you see all this narrative about, talk to Putin narrative, and could it be helpful? Because we know that the French president and his long talks with Putin before the February 24th did not achieve the goal. And the same as, the German chancellors, the former and the previous and the pre-previous, they all, love to talk with Putin and talk about some kind of integral part of Russia in terms of peace in Europe. How do you see it?
the best weapons are talking, so the best discussion is the more weapons you provide, it's a talk that Putin understands, yes. But yeah, and it's a weakness, and if Putin, if Western countries like Germany or France, particularly Macron or Schulz, the Putin sees as a weakness, and he is using them. But also, I should say that Germany is also recognized, has also recognized their bad approach towards Russia. And Scholz, he said that our, perception and our partnership with Russia was a mistake. So it was his words. So which means
yeah, but he said quite a lot. But we should count how many weapons have reached Ukraine, and probably not much. Only the promises.
Yeah, and some Western we have 4 countries actually in Europe which think that discussing can replace weapons, which is Germany, Italy, France, and of course Hungary. Yes, Mr. Orban. So those are Putin's actually friends, but other part which I think which is most important is our allies is the United States, the UK, the Poland, of course Baltic states, and Ukraine, and this is a hard part of the war. And I think this part is right, and it is a future. So Putin understands only weapons, only power, and only after he leaves Ukrainian territory completely, including Crimea, not before February 24, what we have, but we have to leave what we, captured in 2014.
But Vaidotas, when we hear the Westerners talk, especially in the United States, I like to follow the media. Well, the Crimea is actually something which is, well, it's not recognized as a Russian territory. You're absolutely right about this, but nobody is really loudly speaking that this is something that well, they are speaking that maybe this should be left for Russia, and that's maybe the compensation or something like that. Ukrainians, well, and all the other neighbors do believe that everything should be taken back, which was annexed, and in Crimea is the number one thing. Do you really see that the Western allies see all the regions coming back to Ukraine in the nearest future?
Yeah, of course not. Of course, we have. I mentioned those 4 countries. They even they can sacrifice, as many Ukrainian territory as, but of course they don't want to sacrifice their own territory, or they are sharing foreign territory. And it is actually immoral, only Ukrainians, because we are, recognizing Ukraine as a sovereign state, yes, and only they can decide if they want to have that territory which they had before war or not. So they have to be, decision makers about, and thus we have to support them,
But yeah, Vaidotas, I want to stop you here for a second as well, because what I hear in some media sources in the US is they say that yeah, only Ukrainians is a nice narrative, but what those analysts and journalists are saying is that this conflict, this war, has a lot at stake, and we cannot let Ukrainians themselves decide everything, because we are on the brink of something larger, some larger confrontation, some World War III scenario. How do you see this kind of talk?
Please answer me why fighting in Donbass for Ukrainians is what is difference if Ukrainians are fighting for the Donbass region or for the Crimea region? So what is different? It's again war. It's the same war, the same weapons, the same people. Well, I can ask you, for example, we have like a border red line. It's a nuclear weapon, yes. But if we say that red line is an effect what you've done for the country. For example, I can tell you that Ukraine has right now almost 3 big cities totally destroyed. Yes, Mariupol, Kharkov. It's a and it is the same effect if you throw nuclear bomb on that city. Yes, actually the effect is totally the same. It doesn't matter, only, with nuclear weapon, you can do it in seconds, but with that weapons, what Russians are using, including, unconventional weapons, thermobaric weapons, or vacuum bombs, how we call it. They done it in a little bit longer, not per 1 second, but per few months. So effect is already achieved as a nuclear weapon, used. And West is very soft on it. We should say that nuclear weapon is a red line, but also effect is also red line. If you destroy entire city, is the same as nuclear weapon, usage. And Russia should know it. But because of our very softness, now we have destroyed cities, and they keep going.
Okay, so for the finish, I want to ask you, how do you see the perspectives, like the timeline of this? Well, obviously, this all these weapons that are promised to Ukraine, they will probably reach Ukraine this summer. Like in the best case scenario, how long do you think it would take for the Ukrainians to get rid of the Russian troops if they would receive everything that is promised already by the allies? How long it would take them to actually get those Russian soldiers out of the territory?
Well, I think first stage is first goal for Ukrainians is to stabilize the situation in the front. Yes, to stop Russia's advance. Then after, I believe, second part of the summer, they will integrate those new powerful weapons what we receive. And by the end of summer, we will launch counteroffensive. Yes. And by the end of this year, they will reconquer their territory. So this is optimistic and probably realistic, approach. But that means that our Western allies must support, our Ukrainian friends with the weapons, ammunition, and everything they need. That support must be continuous and constant and permanent.
And the pessimistic scenario is what we're going to have a very prolonged stage like we had before with the Donbas region.
And pessimistic scenario, yes, we take over entire Donbas region. Russia, yes, Western countries are lagging with logistics, and Russia is, reinforcing their troops in the Donbas region. And by the end of this year, we are launching major operations towards Kiev, for example. That's pessimistic.
But how likely is that, knowing that this, the reserves of Russia are not not something that is
It's not very likely, but if they need two things, or at least one out of two. First is mobilization. Yes, we have to, in order to win a war, they have to mobilize their society. They have to mobilize million, maybe, population, and it doesn't matter how well they are prepared, but Russia's way of war, they are killing their own people and they are winning battles. That's how they wage wars. It's a not Western approach. Western countries are saving people. And another, is using tactical nuclear weapon. So they need both, or at least one, in order to win the war. Otherwise, they have very little chance to win. But concerning nuclear weapon, we already discussed. And concerning mobilization, I think Putin is afraid himself to launch mobilization, because if you know Russia's history, after mobilizations and after wars, regime is always changed. So.
Well, most of our listeners probably don't know the history of Russia so well, but that's absolutely a fact, which is probably in the mind of Mr. Putin somewhere, that it doesn't end well. Okay, Vaidotas, so it was a pleasure to talk to you. Of course, the topic is huge, and it's hard to do a 40-minute episode and talk about the whole 80 years and 100 days of this aggression of the war. But we will try to do our best with the upcoming episodes. And thanks everyone who were listening. Once again, I want to remind you that we had a guest, which is a founder of a Association of Colonels in Lithuania. So a person with a big military experience and who is always willing to share his knowledge with the viewers. So hopefully we'll see him again. Thanks everyone, and see you in the next episode.